Vivian Marston slapped Megan Foster in front of 12 executives, and Damian Corsi responded by freezing the alliance that was supposed to make Vivian his wife. The slap stopped pens, arguments, even Eleanor Corsi's breath. Megan staggered once, steadied herself against the conference table, and kept hold of the routing sheet Vivian had tried to snatch away. "Contractors, don't decide what happens to this family," Vivian said. Megan looked past her to the 3 hub codes printed in the margin. "Then someone in this family should explain why every altered route leads to the same 3 assets, and why your termination clause activates at midnight." A red status bar flashed across the wall monitor. Transfer preparation. Pending. The executives erupted. Damian did not. He moved beside Megan, close enough that she felt the heat of him, but he did not touch her. "What do you need?" "Not protection, not revenge. Proof preserved exactly as it was." "Freeze every route change. Lock the alliance files. Nobody edits a timestamp." Damian turned to men who normally moved before he finished speaking. "Do exactly what she said." Vivian went pale. Megan understood the cost at once. If she was wrong, her career ended here. If right, Damian had risked his marriage, alliance, and 3 critical hubs because he trusted her judgment. 3 weeks earlier, Megan Foster trusted broken schedules more than polished explanations because schedules always left fingerprints. 3 weeks before Vivian's slap, Megan sat at the kitchen table she had turned into the headquarters of Foster Crisis Logistics, comparing 2 freight delay reports while Leah Brooks worked invoices beside her. "If this Corsi contract pays on time," Leah said, "we finally stop pretending your business account enjoys living at 3 digits. Megan smiled without looking up. "One client doesn't make a stable company." "No, but it does buy you time to find the next one." That mattered. Megan wanted enough independent clients that no employer, partner, or man could ever become the gatekeeper to her future again. The invitation from Corsi Consolidated arrived 10 minutes later. By noon, she was standing inside a glass conference room overlooking Cleveland's industrial riverfront while $11 million in losses were being explained as bad luck. A silver-haired executive glanced at her folder. "Administrative support can wait outside." Megan set the folder on the table. "Good. I'm the crisis specialist you hired." The man flushed. At the far end, Damian Corsi looked up. Megan knew his reputation. More useful was what he did not do. He did not rescue her from the insult. He waited to see whether she could rescue the meeting. She asked for raw shipment logs, warehouse transfers, supplier delays, authentication histories, and timestamps. 2 executives tried to summarize them for her. "No summaries," she said. "I need the mistakes before someone cleaned them into explanations." Damian's mouth almost curved. "Give her everything." 4 hours later, Megan placed 3 failures side by side. Each began with the same authorization code. Each pushed pressure toward the same 3 routes. Random mistakes spread damage. These failures concentrated it. Someone had built the chaos. Then Megan opened the personnel access file attached to the code and saw one name repeated across all 3 events. Graham Keene, 22 years with Corsi Consolidated. Before she could ask who he was, Damian appeared beside her screen. "You found Keene." Megan looked up sharply. He already knew exactly what she had found. Graham Keene could not have changed a 12th floor route file 3 minutes after his badge placed him in the parking garage. Damian's security team had already reached the opposite conclusion. Graham stood across the conference room with 2 guards behind him, pale with disbelief while an executive displayed the access record that carried his credentials. "Remove him from the building," Damian said. "Not yet." The words left Megan before caution could interfere. Damian turned toward her. "You're stopping this on what basis?" "Physics." She crossed to the screen and opened the badge history. At 9:39 p.m., Graham entered the garage. At 9:42, his account supposedly authorized a route change from a terminal 12 floors above us. Unless he can teleport, your evidence contradicts itself. One guard shifted. Graham stared at her. Damian did not. Credentials can be used remotely, he said. Normally, yes, this wasn't normal. Megan expanded the authentication sequence. Standard access required a rotating challenge code after the password. This authorization had skipped it entirely and attached an obsolete token to Graham's account instead. Someone copied an old credential, she said. Your system recognized the name, not the person. The silence that followed felt different from fear. Damian was recalculating. Finally, he looked at the guards. Nobody touches Keen. Verify her sequence first. Megan noticed the cost of that decision. Men who had acted on Damian's certainty were now being told his certainty could be wrong. He faced her again. 72 hours. That's how long we have before 2 clients exercise penalty clauses. I need raw access before your security team interprets anything. You get it. And nobody changes logs without telling me. His eyes narrowed, not offended, measuring. My condition is simple. If you find danger tied to my people, you bring it to me before acting alone. Megan thought of powerful men who had ever preferred obedience to bad news. Evidence first, she said. Loyalty second. A spark of approval crossed Damian's face. Agreed. Then a technician called from the doorway. The obsolete token had one archived source. The Marston merger migration package. Damian gave Megan access to every system, except the habit of being obeyed. At 7 the next morning, he wanted to suspend all outbound freight from the 3 affected hubs. Megan wanted the opposite. If you lock everything, she said, spreading route maps across the operations table, you don't stop the cascade, you concentrate it. Damian folded his arms. Explain. She traced the sequence with one finger. A delayed container at the first warehouse had already been rerouted twice. If Corsi froze the network, refrigerated cargo, medical supplies, and contract freight would pile into the same 2 alternate hubs the saboteur had repeatedly targeted. Someone is steering pressure, Megan said. If we panic, we finish the job for them. Damian studied the map, then looked toward his operations director. Follow her sequence. No debate, no correction. Megan hated how much she liked that. For 3 hours, she redirected freight through smaller facilities, staggered departure windows, and isolated the compromised authorization path without stopping the network. By noon, the projected loss from the next failure had fallen from $4 million to less than $600,000. Damian brought her coffee. She glanced at it. Is this your apology for almost crashing your own network? It's recognition that you've been awake since yesterday. Dangerously close to concern. Don't get ambitious. The private humor surprised a laugh out of her. More surprising was the fact that Damian smiled with her instead of at her. Later, when the room emptied, he noticed the wedding invitation half buried beneath her notebook. You don't like weddings? Megan's hand stopped. I used to. He waited rather than pressing. That restraint made answering harder. My former fiancé built his career with my help, she said. Money, contacts, emergencies, every ugly problem he didn't want anyone else to see. Then success arrived, and apparently I stopped matching the picture he wanted beside him. Damian's expression cooled. Megan looked down at the invitation. I thought being needed meant being loved. He was quiet for several seconds. When I took over this organization, I trusted a man who knew every weakness in it. He used that trust to nearly break us. She looked at him. I learned control faster than I learned grief, Damian said. Eventually, I stopped knowing the difference between preventing betrayal and expecting it. It was the first thing he had given her that could not be entered into a report. Megan closed the invitation. "That sounds exhausting." "It is." The answer was so dry that she smiled again. Their moment ended when a technician delivered the archive index. The obsolete token format had been copied into the Marston migration package during compatibility testing. Damian's face hardened. That archive was supposed to be isolated. Supposed to be isn't evidence. He gave her a long look, then nodded. Verify it. An executive objected immediately. The archive contained merger material, restricted routing logic, and private acquisition data. Giving a contractor access, he argued, crossed every normal boundary. Damian did not raise his voice. "Megan stopped me from destroying Graham Keene's career and prevented another multi-million-dollar failure. From now on, no conclusion involving these incidents reaches me before she sees the underlying data." The executive fell silent. Public trust felt more dangerous than private admiration. Hours later, Megan found Damian still beside the archive terminal after everyone else had gone. The immediate crisis was stable. She could leave. He closed the file between them. "Stay for dinner." There was no report in his hand, no operational reason for her answer to be yes. Megan stayed. This time it was her choice. The first real victory arrived with a list of 3 routes Megan had already learned to distrust. By late afternoon, Graham Keene's name had been formally cleared. The 4th failure had been contained, and Corsi Consolidated's network was moving without another warning spreading across the operations wall. Damian stood before the recovery team with Megan beside him. From this point forward, root decisions come through her. Several executives looked at Megan differently after that. Not warmly, not all of them, but no one mistook her for support staff now. Authority should have felt satisfying. Instead, Megan kept staring at the 3 hub codes printed beside the stabilized routes. A17, C04, K12. She had seen them before. Dinner happened hours later in Damian's private conference suite, away from screens and subordinates. For once, neither of them opened a file immediately. "You stayed," Damian said. "You asked. That distinction matters to you. It should matter to you too." His gaze held hers. "It does." The quiet between them changed. Megan became aware of how close he was, not because he moved toward her, but because he stopped before doing so. "May I?" The question unsettled her more than confidence would have. Megan answered by closing the distance herself. The kiss was restrained at first, warm and careful, then deep enough to make her forget every spreadsheet waiting outside the room. When they separated, Damian did not reach for her again. He let the choice remain hers. Then Megan saw the continuity annex lying beneath the dinner tray. She pulled it free. A17, C04, K12. Her pulse steadied for an entirely different reason. "These aren't just damaged roots." Damian came around the table. "What are they?" "The 3 assets singled out in the Marston Continuity Agreement." His expression changed. Megan flipped back through the archive notes. The obsolete authentication token had entered Corsi's environment during Marston migration testing. Now the same 3 hubs targeted by the sabotage were the 3 hubs protected by special contingency language. A memory struck her. That morning, Vivian had asked whether the Cascade designation had been removed. Megan had never used that term outside the recovery team. "She knew," Megan said. Damian went still. Megan met his eyes. Their first kiss was barely minutes old, and now she was about to place a knife through the center of his future. "Your fiancé knew enough to be inside this." Damian tried to protect Megan by taking a choice away from her, and that was the one mistake she could not forgive, quietly. For several seconds after Megan said Vivian knew, he did nothing. Then Damian asked, "How certain?" "Certain enough to confront her, not certain enough to accuse her publicly." His mouth tightened. "You go nowhere near her alone." Megan heard the old instinct beneath the words. Control first, questions later. "I'm not asking permission." She found Vivian in a private lounge adjoining the executive floor. The woman's expression barely changed when Megan placed the continuity sheet between them. "You knew the Cascade designation," Megan said. "That term never left the recovery team." Vivian glanced at the paper. "Maybe Damian mentioned it." "He didn't." A pause. Megan watched recognition move through her face and disappear. "Tell him yourself," Megan said. "If you knew your family had access to compromised migration files, tell him before I do." Vivian's smile chilled. "You really believe honesty is what he values most?" "I believe evidence is." "No." Vivian stepped closer. "He values usefulness. Right now you are useful." The word struck exactly where intended. Vivian continued softly. "Men like Damian admire women who solve problems. They marry women who belong beside them." Megan took the paper back. "Then you should have no trouble disproving me." She left before Vivian could answer. An hour later, Damian had the evidence and had frozen Marston access to the migration archive. Then security discovered an attempted intrusion into Megan's work files. Fear changed him faster than reason. Without telling her, Damian ordered her laptop mirrored, outside communications restricted, and 2 guards assigned to follow her whenever she left the building. Megan discovered it when Leah's call failed 3 times. "What did you do?" Damian did not pretend misunderstanding. "Someone targeted your files." "So you targeted my freedom." "I protected the investigation." "You made decisions about my work, my phone, and my movements without asking me." "I wasn't going to gamble with your safety." "And I wasn't yours to gamble with." The words cut deeper because of the kiss still living between them. Damian stepped toward her, then stopped. "Megan." "No, you listened until being afraid became inconvenient." She shut her laptop. His face changed. "If you leave now, Vivian gets exactly what she wants." "Maybe. But if I stay under rules I never agreed to, she isn't the only problem." Megan walked out with one thing Damian did not know she possessed: the untouched printed continuity sheet. Hurt turned her independence into secrecy. She told herself she would verify it alone. Minutes later, she found the same 3 hub codes dated before the crisis. And beneath them, a cute instruction, still waiting despite Marston access, being frozen. Vivian's board challenge arrived before Megan could trace it. Tonight. Mandatory. Megan no longer had system access. The confrontation would decide whether her evidence survived, and she would enter it carrying the one clue Damian still did not know existed. By 9:10 p.m., the rooting crisis was contained. Graham Keane was cleared, and Vivian Marston was furious enough to stop pretending. Damian found Megan outside the operations floor before the board meeting began. He stopped several feet away, as if distance itself had become part of the apology. "I removed every restriction," he said. "Your phone, your laptop, the security detail. I also signed a record of what I authorized and why. You can keep it." Megan studied him. "Good intentions don't erase what you did." "I know." His voice stayed level. "I was afraid, so I used authority instead of trust." That was the first apology he had given her that asked for nothing. Megan exhaled. "And I kept evidence from you because I was angry enough to believe needing no one was safer." Damian glanced at the folder in her hand. He did not ask for it. "What do you want to do?" The question mattered. "I'm going back in." Together they entered the boardroom. Vivian had already framed the evening as a credibility hearing. She accused Megan of manufacturing suspicion to gain influence over Damian, then sneered at the idea that a woman like Megan could ever belong beside him. Megan laid the records across the table. "Don't argue about me. Argue with the timestamps." Vivian could not. When the ownership trail reached Marston Holdings, Eleanor's objections weakened. Graham's exoneration was recorded, with Megan's analysis named as the reason. Vivian's composure broke next. She struck Megan across the face. Megan straightened. Damian ended the engagement and ordered the alliance terminated. This time, he did not decide Megan's next move. He looked at her first. Their new rule had survived its first test, and for 1 minute, everyone believed the crisis was finally over. Then Megan's tablet chimed. Continuity transfer. AC. Activated by termination. Her relief vanished. They had won exactly what Vivian needed them to win. The termination notice should have ended the threat. Instead, it activated it. Megan pulled the continuity sheet from her folder and laid it beside the alert. A17, CIA04, K12, the same 3 hubs. Damian read the clause. Temporary control transfers if the partnership collapses after 3 qualifying service failures. Not if the alliance succeeds, Megan said. If it fails. The meaning landed between them. Vivian had never needed the merger completed. She needed Damian angry enough to destroy it himself. Megan rebuilt the sequence aloud. The copied token created failures that looked internal. The failures struck the exact hubs named in the continuity annex. The evidence against Vivian was obvious enough to be discovered, because discovery guaranteed outrage. Outrage guaranteed termination. Termination triggered transfer. Even the cued instruction made sense now. It survived the access freeze because it wasn't meant to hide her involvement, Megan said. It was meant to make sure the 3rd qualifying failure still happened. Damian looked toward the operations floor. How long? Megan checked the timestamp. 51 minutes. His expression hardened. Tell me what to lock. She almost answered alone, out of habit. Instead, she opened the folder fully and turned it toward him. No, we do this differently. Damian waited. We need to prove the failures were induced before the transfer becomes binding. I need untouched routing records, authentication history, and the original path data beneath your public system. A pause. There is another layer, Damian said. Megan studied him. He did not evade her gaze. Private routes, off-book priorities. If I open them, people outside this room will eventually know they exist. That was the cost. Vivian had counted on him refusing. Megan closed her hand around the continuity sheet. Then that is where the truth is. Damian looked at the clock. 11:43 p.m. At 11:43 p.m., Megan told Damian the only way to save his company was to expose the part of it he had spent 20 years hiding. The operations center doors locked behind them. 12 monitors tracked freight across the 3 contested hubs while a smaller screen counted down to 12:01. 17 minutes. Damian opened the private routing layer. Rows of off-book priorities appeared beneath the public system. Favored corridors, protected transfers, schedules never meant for regulators, partners, or auditors. Megan pointed to the first hub. I need the untouched path from before the override. Damian called for the archive. No, she said. He stopped. If anyone exports, cleans, or reorders these logs, Vivian can argue we built the chronology afterward. Freeze the room as is. Damian looked toward security, then back to Megan. What do you need? Not an order. A question. 10 uninterrupted minutes. Graham's original authentication history. The migration package. And your authorization to expose this entire layer if the proof requires it. Damian's eyes moved once to the hidden routes. Then he entered his master credential. You have it. She began rebuilding the chain. A normal shipment had been redirected through A-17. The override used Graham's copied token. That false instruction overloaded COA-4, forcing contract freight toward K-12. The third failure then satisfied the continuity clause. But one gap remained. Vivian had anticipated the public logs. "She expects us to stop here," Megan said. Damian watched her. "Why?" "Because the public system only proves the failures happened. Your private layer proves they were engineered." She enlarged a buried path record. The off-book corridor had continued moving priority freight. During every supposed network collapse, someone had preserved that corridor while deliberately starving the three contractual hubs. The sabotage was selective, not chaos. Design. At 11:52, Megan sent the preserved chain to the independent compliance terminal. A rejection appeared. Insufficient origin verification. Damian stepped forward. Megan caught his sleeve. "Don't fix it for me." His gaze dropped to her hand. She released him. "I need Graham's pre-migration token registry." "It's sealed under my office authority." "Then open it. Don't alter it." Damian nodded. The registry loaded. There it was. The obsolete token copied 2 weeks before the first failure through the Marston migration environment. 11:57. Megan attached the registry, private route history, continuity clause, and original timestamps into one sequence. Damian read the warning before she submitted. "Disclosure will trigger external review of restricted routes." "This closes the corridor," he said. "Yes, and exposes everyone tied to it." "Yes." He could still refuse. Vivian had built the trap around that belief. Damian looked at Megan. "Submit it." She did. The countdown reached 11:59 before the screen changed. Continuity claim invalidated. The 3 hubs remained Corsi-controlled. Damian ordered the off-book corridor permanently closed. Millions disappeared with a sentence. Megan looked at him. He had not saved her by taking control. He had trusted her enough to surrender some of his. Now that the Empire was safe, her contract was finished. When the crisis ended, Damian offered Megan nothing she had not asked for. By morning, the 3 contested hubs were still under Corsi control, but victory did not look clean. The off-book corridor was closed. Outside compliance review had begun. Several associates stopped returning Damian's calls, and Graham Keene's personnel file carried a correction, naming Megan's analysis as the reason his record had been restored. Megan finished her final report in silence. Damian read the last page, signed beneath her conclusions, and slid the document back. "That completes the contract," she said. His expression barely moved. "I know." He could have offered her an executive title, a permanent office, enough money to make leaving irrational. He offered none of it. That mattered more than Megan wanted to admit. Leah met her 2 days later in the rented office. They had joked was barely large enough for confidence. 3 inquiries waited in their inbox, each from companies that had reviewed Megan's work during the Corsi crisis. No favors, no secret introductions, no strings. For the first time, Foster Crisis Logistics looked less like a fragile plan and more like a future. Weeks later, Eleanor Corsi asked to meet. "I measured you by the image I thought this family required," she said. "I ignored character when character was what protected us." Megan accepted the apology, but not absolution. "I can forgive you," she said. "That doesn't mean it didn't hurt." Eleanor nodded. "I understand." Months passed before Damian asked for anything personal. He kept contact simple, a message, coffee, dinner when Megan suggested it. Never a manufactured emergency, never a client who arrived through Corsi channels. Then one evening, he stood outside her office after closing. "I'd like to take you to dinner." Megan smiled. "We've had dinner. Not for work." She studied him. He did not fill the silence. "You're asking me on a date?" "Yes." She had her own clients, her own income, her door to close if she wanted. Nothing about her answer was owed. "Yes," Megan said. Damian smiled, relieved rather than triumphant. For once, choosing love did not feel like surrendering independence. It felt like keeping it. 6 months later, Damian still asked before answering questions that belonged to Megan. At a logistics gala, a businessman smiled toward her and asked Damian, "Will you introduce us?" Damian looked at Megan first. She understood the question. "Megan Foster," she said, offering her hand. "Founder of Foster Crisis Logistics." Only then did Damian add, "And the person who taught my company that bad data can be more dangerous than bad luck." Megan laughed. His hand waited beside hers instead of closing around it. She chose to lace their fingers together. Her phone vibrated with a shipment alert. Damian glanced at the screen but said nothing. Megan checked the notice, saw it could wait, and silenced the phone. "5 minutes," she said. "For me?" "For us." They left the ballroom together. The alert remained unanswered. The world kept moving, and Megan discovered that being needed no longer meant being owned. Megan's journey was never about becoming worthy of Damian's attention. She was already skilled, principled, and capable before she entered his world. What changed was her willingness to believe that independence did not require isolation. Damian changed in the opposite direction. He learned that power could protect a business, but trust required restraint, accountability, and respect for another person's autonomy. Their partnership became possible only when neither of them used fear to control the other. That lesson reaches beyond romance. Healthy love does not erase independence. It creates room for two complete people to choose one another without debt, ownership, or obligation. Which mattered more to you? Megan learning to accept partnership, or Damian learning to surrender control? If this story stayed with you, share your answer in the comments. Subscribe for more Mafia boss romances, and join us for the next story, where love must be chosen, never owed. End of script. Sweet dreams.